Hello there and welcome to the Nihil channel. My name is Chris and you came to hear me talk about Lost Eidolons. I'm currently playing through it on my channel right now and it's quite a long game. I'm almost at the halfway point from what I understand, but I keep getting asked the question, would you recommend this? Should I buy this? Should I wait? Is it worth it? So I wanted to do just kind of a quick video on my initial thoughts. What do I think? I'm going to go over a couple of different segments of the game, and that will give you a better idea as to, is this a good game for you to get or not? So the first thing is combat, because that is something that is really important to an SRPG. Is it fun to play? Because that is where you spend the majority of your time, ideally. There's some I've played that you don't. But, you might think, looking at it, it's like Fire Emblem, because that's a lot of people's frame of reference, and I totally get why. But I would say that's not quite accurate. It's really, really different than that. One of the main differences is Fire Emblem is very enemy turn focused. A strategy that works quite well is put your tankiest unit at the front lines, have them get hit, have them deal damage, and you're good to go. Not so with Lost Eidolons. You deal reduced damage in counterattacks, and it's reduced by a lot. So you're not going to be wanting to turtle quite as much. It's going to be a lot more offense-focused. If you're going to be killing enemies, that's going to be on your turn, not their turn, like 99% of the time. Another really big difference is you cannot move past enemies. They stop you. So you have to kill enemies in order to get around them. You can't like go around like you can in Fire Emblem. The battle lines look a little bit different. If you have a front line, it looks a little different because you don't need somebody in every single spot. You can have just, if you got a tank here and a tank here, you can leave a spot in between. And enemies can't move through that. It's the same for them as it is for you, which is definitely good. I was nervous about that at the start. So another thing I totally forgot to cover in my initial recording, I'm doing this after the fact, is there is not a weapon triangle. That's just not how this works. So the way this works is there is an armor triangle that relates to weapons. It's a little bit odd. So the way it works is spears and bows are good against cloth armor, which is what mages wear. So you kind of have your spear users, and your archers are good against mages. Mages are kind of good against everything. Swords and... see, I don't even remember at this point. That's the easiest one to remember. There's also swords and axes, and those are good against heavy armor and medium armor. I can't tell you which is which. It doesn't stand out to me that much, honestly. They have a helpful chart that actually is always on display for you in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And I don't know if I can grab footage of it very easily because my camera is over it in my Let's Play. But it's there, and it's not that interesting. Like I said, I kind of forget that it's a thing because it just is not that big a deal. I'll check it every so often if a character's low or if a character has to take a hit, and I am really taking a second to think about it, but it just doesn't add that much. In a sequel, I wouldn't say update it out, because it doesn't matter, but in a sequel, I could take it or leave it. Doesn't really matter to me. Another huge thing that I can't believe I neglected to talk about was the turn limits. That was a huge thing on launch that really upset people. People were not fond of the fact that every single level in the game had hard turn limits. You had about 20 turns. This choice resulted in a wave of negative reviews of the game right at launch, because Ocean Drive Studios didn't think that it would be a big deal. And my take is it's not a big deal. Playing it, I have not ever butted up against that, literally even once. Most of the time I use half, if not less than half, of the turns allotted. And it eventually does get bigger. Sometimes it's 15 turns, sometimes it's 25. But I never get close to even using all of those. And Ocean Drive Studios freaked out and did get that changed. Now when you start the game, you can choose to not have turn limits, which, if that was an option mid-game, I would have chosen. Because they just don't add anything. Like, I saw people saying, well, they should be removed and stuff, and Ocean Drive Studios said this was difficult initially because they just didn't plan for that at all. And I found that really bizarre, because like I said, it's so forgiving that, like, it doesn't affect anything. So whether they're there or not, I'm like, I just don't know what the point was. I'm glad they got rid of them overall, because it makes more people happy. And if not, I was worried for a minute there that this would be the turn limit SRPG. People would kind of know it as that. I definitely don't think that's a fair assessment. And I don't think that's what this deserves to be known as, because they're just so inconsequential. But yeah, removing them was the right call. I suppose I should also talk about, is there permadeath? And the answer is yes. I do find it really funny. The two options for permadeath are casual, which is no permadeath, people return after battle, like they do in other SRPGs. And the other option is maniac. So you're either a casual or you're a maniac. And I found that pretty funny. For my playthrough, I've been a filthy casual, because that's how I like to play SRPGs, and there's no shame in that. I will say about the difficulty, I'm playing on normal. It hasn't been very hard. I've been able to make it through just about every battle without losing anybody. I think the only time... I might have lost somebody once, just due to difficulty. I think that might have been it. The only other times were if I was doing something stupid to try something, or something that I would never do if I wasn't on casual mode, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't say it's particularly difficult, especially as I get later in the game. Yeah, it just hasn't been very hard. Some people definitely outshine others. I've got my favorites, I've got my people I can count on, but that's kind of how every SRPG is as well. You get your Jagans and Fire Emblem in Shining Force, you get your Peters and your Xylos, and they can carry you through the game. In this case, for me, that's been Francisco. Francisco has been able to reliably carry me through just about anything. He takes about 1 damage from everything except mages. He's really, really stinking good. And, yeah. I mean, not so much that it breaks the game, but it definitely makes it significantly easier. So I should probably go into skills and classes here as well. These work a lot like Fire Emblem Three Houses. Again, you use something, you get better at it. It's sort of like that game in that everybody can equip bows, you shoot things more often, you do more damage with your bow, you're more likely to get crits, that kind of thing. You'll also develop bow skills, and that will allow you to change to classes that are good at bows. So that's kind of how it works. My complaint with the class system is that there's not enough. There's enough variety, but I'm moving through them too quickly. I have people that have maxed out their class. Well, the next ones don't unlock for several more chapters, and it does tell you that, which I appreciate, but yeah, I just feel like I'm a little bit spinning my tires for some characters because they're maxed out and can't grow too much more right now. And the same for weapons. You have a mastery level, and this goes up to 10 until, as far as I understand, you get to other classes that I don't have access to yet. But once you get to 10, you stop growing in that weapon category. Well, a lot of my characters have hit 10 already, and that isn't great. They hit 10 pretty quick. I would say around chapter 9, I was having people cap out on weapons. It says, the game tells me, I get access to higher classes at chapter 17. So, what is that, like 8 chapters that I just am going to be spinning my tires? In a game that is, as far as I know, 28 chapters. 8 chapters of sort of spinning your tires for a character doesn't feel good. It's still not that big a deal. No, let me rephrase that. It's not a deal breaker. It's kind of a big deal, though. It's another thing that I don't think can be changed a whole lot in the game's current setup, and that's fine, it is what it is, but for a sequel, I would like to see that balanced a whole lot better. Because, yeah, it just needs a lot of work. The last thing that's hugely different in combat is environmental spells, effects, things like that. Those are huge. Not so huge that you deal with them in every single chapter, but like, I would say 1 out of every 3 chapters-ish, I've had to deal with environmental stuff. Now, what does that mean? Running through puddles, running through rivers, will get your characters wet, and lightning magic now does more damage. It's the same standing in a forest. You know, in Fire Emblem, you might want to stand in a forest tile to get extra avoid. In this, there is no avoid. Talk about that in just a second. But you still might want to stand in a forest. If someone uses fire magic, they set that forest on fire. Makes sense. And that's not good for you. Now, another thing I mentioned is there's no avoid. There's no missing here. There's still crit chance like there is in your other SRPGs, but now there's a guard chance. And you have a % to guard instead of dodge. And what that does is heavily reduce the damage that you're taking. So you and enemies both have this. You can use a defense option if someone's equipped with a shield to give that more of a chance. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But since you don't want to be defending too much, it's not huge. It just kind of is there. Items are also a thing. There's no durability here, which I personally am happy with. I don't enjoy dealing with durability too much in SRPGs, but some people, that's a really big deal, is item management. You still have potions and things that do have durability. I believe you use them and they're gone forever. I honestly haven't had to use them very much. But weapons don't have durability, and spells don't either. The way spells work is your mages learn a lot of different spells, and they have spots in the grimoire they have equipped, which is like a tome. And you can equip a certain amount of those spells from their spell list, and that's what they take into battle with them. And then this works kind of like Fire Emblem Three Houses, in that you can use a spell a certain amount of times per battle, and then once that battle is over, those uses are refreshed when you go into the next one. So you can use all your spells every battle and not worry about it. The next biggest thing I would say other than combat for SRPGs is characters. SRPGs live and die by their characters, second only to their combat. So how are the characters? Pretty endearing overall, I would say. I like the whole main cast, and for SRPGs, I'm used to wanting to recruit more characters and bolster my ranks, you know, swap in people that are unique and interesting. And not as much in Lost Eidolons. I actually like the starting cast a lot. And they grow with you so much. There's a lot of character development, to the point that I don't think I really care too much to swap them out for new recruits. Now, there are still new recruits, and the way that works is you find them around your camp, you gotta make friends with them, and that's how you get people to join you. This can take a lot of time. I've missed the first one so far because I just could not get her to join me that fast. They do eventually leave your camp, so it's difficult to get them sometimes if you're not really focusing on it. Now, do you want to do that? Yeah, there's not a whole lot to focus on in the camp other than that, I find, which is a good thing, and I'll get to camp here in a minute. But my complaint with that is that the new recruits don't seem to be as involved in the story. There's a couple that join you that are definitely more involved, but the ones that are more optional that you could definitely miss don't have as much to say about the situations they're in as you would want them to. They definitely feel like more of an addition than something that was planned the whole time. So if you're really into recruiting characters and stuff, it's still there for you. You still have options, and it hasn't detracted for me that much, like I said, because I like the main cast so much. But it is a little bit of a bummer that the new recruits don't have more to say. So let's talk the camp. It definitely feels inspired by Three Houses. I'm not sure if it is, because this was in development long enough that I'm not sure they had time to be inspired by Three Houses. Maybe they were, at least to some extent. I'm not sure. But I will say I like it more than Three Houses so far. And the reason being is that you can move around the camp fast. You can fast travel to specific individuals that you want to talk to. The camp is not too big. There's no loading screens. It's extremely fluid. And there's not too much to do there. Don't get me wrong, there's a good amount. But, like, you're playing an SRPG. You don't want to be stuck in your camp for too long, because that's not why you're here. This is very much not a dating sim. This is talk with your people, hear what each character thinks about what you're doing if you want to, and then you leave and you're back on the road to the story. Now, there are some optional battles, and these aren't great. They are fast, but yeah, I wish I could recommend those more. This could have been a bonus to the game, I think, if they were unique, but I've done 3 or 4 so far, and I'm already seeing the same map over again. So that's not great, but like I said, they're pretty quick, so it's not that big a deal, but I kind of wonder, I think they might be here so that if you do decide to swap out some of your people and people get a little bit behind, then you can get them leveled up a little bit. And they do try to help you with that a little bit as well, in terms of, you have aides, which are sort of like the Three Houses adjutants. You can equip people to other people, and they level, I think they get half the experience that the person they're equipped to does. And that's not bad, you know, that's not a bad way of handling it. The only caveat is that they can only be equipped to someone higher level than they are. And that feels really like an odd choice. I'm not really sure why that was done. I almost feel like it's supposed to be an immersion thing, like they're being taught by this person that's higher level than them. But like, it doesn't really add anything, it just is a little bit annoying to manage. And once they're equipped, if they, like, you know, sometimes they catch up and you're the same level for a little bit and they don't unequip, so I'm like, it just doesn't seem to matter that much. So I would probably change that. They also, like, give certain pair-up sort of skills, but these are not very big. It's more about just keeping everybody at pace, which I do appreciate, the ability to do that, so you're not endlessly grinding with them otherwise. There's not currently, I think, a repeatable battle that you can just keep doing to grind, but the devs have talked about adding that and seem pretty open to the idea, so they may do that in the future. Let's talk story, because story is also important. So far my impression of the story is good, but takes a while to get going. And it's also a bit by the numbers. So what I mean by that, the best way I could boil it down, I'm looking at my little notes in front of me because I'm terrible at scripted videos, and this is scripted. But the characters make the story special, and not the other way around. And you might go, duh, but yeah, it's just kind of the, we're rebels, we're gonna go do the thing. Yeah, that we're gonna fight the evil empire. It is what it is. It's nothing like super original. I started getting into the story though around chapter 8 is when I really started to get into the story. And for how long it took me to get there, that's not stellar. I would say it's worth it to get there, you know, but it definitely takes some time. And the reason that is where I started to get into it is you get to see sort of this camaraderie, this relationship between the two characters, Eden, which is your main character, and Ballastar, which is a man that you run into that's part of the same army you are. And Eden and Ballastar do things in really, really different ways from each other. But they still are kind of forced to be together and forced to be friends or rivals, or you're not really sure what it is. At one point I was like, is this romantic? I'm joking, but like, just a little bit. They definitely have a bromance going on. But it's a very fluid relationship. Things change really quickly, but it's really, they're definitely the main characters, I would say. And Ballastar is not a playable character, so that's really interesting to me as well, that I would say one of the main characters isn't playable. But I really like the dynamic that Eden and Ballastar have, and that, to me, sets the story apart more than anything, is that if you ask me what is Lost Eidolons about, it is about the relationship between Eden, the farm boy mercenary, and Ballastar, the hardened warrior who has been at war with the Empire his whole life, and the different ways that they do things. That's what the story is really about. That's what the meat of it is. And it's definitely compelling. I definitely like it so far, and I'm excited to see where it keeps going. So, regarding story, though, something that I have to touch on is the beginning of the game. Now, I saw on one of the updates that the developers decided to make some changes to the beginning of the game, and that had me really stoked. What they decided to do was delete the first 3 cutscenes. And I'm like, not sure that was a good decision. Some people were complaining there's too much talking. Too much talking, just get to it. There is a lot of talking. If you like historical dramas, you will feel right at home. Because this definitely feels like kind of period piece, very character-driven drama stuff. For me, that's not a bad thing. I really like that, and I enjoy sitting back, relaxing, and just letting the dialogue play out and kind of getting to know different characters more. To me, it almost reminds me of kind of like a Game of Thrones style thing, and I kind of wonder if that's what people that are watching my Let's Play are getting out of that. Because there are some episodes that just have story, pretty much, and me seeing that go by, commentating, it's kind of like we're watching it together. But if you don't like a lot of dialogue, you can just skip it, and also if you don't, piddle around town so much, you definitely will get less dialogue. So some of it's kind of up to you. I guess people were complaining that there was too much, so to loop back to my point, they decided to delete the first 3 cutscenes, and I'm like, they said this was to get you to the first battle faster. The reason I keep going, the reason I think that was not a good decision was because the prologue, to me, is the biggest sticking point I have with this entire game. The prologue is awful. It just spoils a large part of the game. I don't know exactly where it is. I haven't hit that yet. Up through, like, chapter 11, 12-ish. But, yeah, it just is it's a flash forward that spoils a bunch, and it's supposed to add, like, a tutorial section, but it really doesn't do a good enough job teaching you anything. It took me, like, a chapter or 2 to really pick up how the game worked and start to settle into the mechanics. And even still, they're still throwing new mechanics at me around chapter 11, which I appreciate, but the tutorial in the prologue just isn't really needed. Yeah, it just... I don't like prologues that spoil things. If you're a Fire Emblem fan, the best thing I can liken it to is Fire Emblem Shadows of Valentia. Because if you've played that game, I guess it's not the prologue. It really is just, it starts you, when you hit start game, there's a cutscene that does a flash forward and spoils a moment that happens right before the end of the game. And I hated that. Because I knew it was coming, and it added nothing, like, narratively. It didn't make me intrigued, it didn't make me interested. I'm already interested. So don't tell me how this is gonna end. That doesn't make any sense. And that's exactly what Lost Eidolons does as well. It tells you exactly how this is gonna end. And, yeah, I hate that. And I've expressed this to the developers. I've expressed that I think they should delete this portion of the game. And I don't know if they're gonna do that or not. I'm not the only one that's expressed that, I know. So I do hope that that gets changed, and I think it will be a stronger game and a stronger story because of that. So, overall, let me kind of wrap it up here. The game's been really fun so far. The developers are asking $35 US for it, and I would definitely say it is worth it to me so far. It is a really long game, and that seems to be something that a lot of people care about. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It feels AAA, honestly, and I'm looking at my notes here. It seems like their budget was around $50,000, which is crazy that they've been able to make this look as pretty as they have and do as much as they have. The dev team has also been super receptive to change requests in the Discord. They started a list where we can vote on what changes we think not only should be made, but the more votes it gets, the higher priority it is, and it moves up the board, and that kind of is like their roadmap. I thought that was a super innovative way of launching a game and then making changes to it, and that's something I would love to see emulated by every single developer under the sun, because it's just awesome. There's times you shouldn't listen to the community on changes, but this is not one of those times. This has definitely been a really, really good thing. Yeah, so Ocean Drive Studios has been great so far. They're the ones that made this, and they don't have many games under their belt. In fact, I think this might be their very first game, which to me just is astounding. Though they are hard at work on a second as well that is not an SRPG. It's kind of more of an action game, and I might check that out too, because they've just impressed me so much. So yeah, young South Korean studio, doing absolutely awesome. And they're trying to make Lost Eidolons, it seems like they're trying to position it to be the Fire Emblem for Xbox. And I can definitely confirm that is definitely a possibility. I don't know how much demand there is for SRPGs on Xbox, but there's kind of the fact that no one's really tried it. So we'll see how that pans out for them. But as for the PC release, would recommend, definitely... You should definitely pick it up if you like SRPGs, if you like Fire Emblem, if you like Shining Force, Tactics Ogre, Final Fantasy Tactics, any of those. This should definitely be in your pickups, because it's been really fun so far, and I think that you would enjoy it if you like those other games. How are you enjoying Lost Eidolons so far? If you have it, or if you have any other questions, make sure to leave them in the comments down below. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I've got a lot of other really neat SRPG videos around the channel, so I hope you stick around. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.